Good afternoon, Robert Scribbler. It is September 13th, 2018. Thank you for joining me for another climate change and clean energy video blog. Now for this segment, I am going to talk again about Hurricane Florence, which is now raking the North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia coasts with an extremely large circulation pattern that expanded overnight as the maximum sustained winds dropped to around 105 miles per hour, according to the National Hurricane Center. It's worth noting that the total energy of this storm is probably comparable to that of at least a Category 3. The storm surge values that are produced by the National Hurricane Center have not dropped, as the peak winds have dropped, because the wind field is expanding, and unfortunately this storm is expected to pound the North Carolina, South Carolina, and southern Virginia coasts for the next 24 hours as it slows down as it approaches land. It's a very dangerous situation for those living on the coast, and it's worth noting that this storm is now much larger than it was a day ago and is likely to have much more wide-ranging effects. Looking at the GOES visible satellite shot, we can see the massive swirl of this clouds with outflow bands crossing into Maryland and in some cases extreme southern Pennsylvania. So a very, very large storm that is now covering multiple states in its circulation pattern. The National Weather Service radar, let me go ahead and refresh this, has picked up the rain bands of Florence, which are now swirling into the Carolinas and getting into extreme southern Virginia. These heavy rains have been impacting the coastal Carolinas now for about 2 hours, and tropical storm winds have been coming on shore for about an hour or two now as well. Just like to note that here is the center of circulation, but that the impacts from rains and strong winds are far flung from the storm's center. The National Weather Service is predicting storm surge flooding in the range of 2 to 4 feet up to the Virginia border and down to Charleston, 4 to 9 feet in the northern section of South Carolina to include Myrtle Beach and the extreme southern section of North Carolina, and 4 to 9 feet along most of the Outer Banks from about Avon all the way south to near Morehead City, and 9 to 13 feet in the Wilmington, Jacksonville, and Morehead City region, as well as in some of the coastal estuaries to the north. So very severe storm surge flooding. And on top of that, the storm is expected to dump an extraordinary amount of rainfall in the range of 22 to more than 30 inches in some locations, with some models showing as much as 40 inches as the storm slows down as it approaches the coast. It's also worth noting that a very wide swath of heavy rainfall is expected to impact the U.S. East Coast over the next 5 days, as Florence lends moisture into a pattern that has been dumping heavy rain over parts of the east for much of summer now. I'm just going to go ahead and show you some video clips that have been posted on Twitter. This one taken on Seabreeze Drive near Road Anthony, North Carolina, which is rather far north of where the storm is at present, maybe about 130, 140 miles at least to the north of the storm, possibly as much as 200 miles. And as you can see, we're already getting a good degree of overwash and road flooding in this region of the Outer Banks, and this is a region that is very far removed from the storm, so far-flung effects. Also like to post this this clip from the AC News Twitter feed showing very strong winds near Cape Fear, North Carolina, on what looks like a pier with large swells starting to roll in. This about a little bit more than an hour ago now. So I just like to add, let's see how much time we have. Okay, so we got some time. So what I'd like to do now is just talk about how human-caused climate change has made Florence worse. And there are a number of respects. First off, Florence is heading in on higher sea levels, which will result in more storm surge related damage. Seas have been rising as fossil fuel burning has forced the earth to warm. Florence has fed on much warmer than normal sea surface temperatures, and sea surface temperatures off the North Carolina coast right now are very warm, in the range of at least 1 to 2 degrees Celsius above normal for this time of year. This provides more fuel for the storm to expand, to intensify, to have more intense effects, and to have more far-reaching effects. And the other value that is enhancing Florence is overall increased atmospheric water vapor. As the earth warms, more water vapor gets loaded into the atmosphere, and this can provide more fuel for storms, in particular extreme rainfall events. And unfortunately, we're expecting very extreme rainfall from Florence. You're going to probably hear a lot of political pundits talk about how, oh, this is Mother Nature and this is not climate change. Well, the truth of the matter is there are some climate change influences on this weather pattern. So it's unlikely that Florence would have been as strong, would have made landfall as strong as far north, would have had such far-reaching effects, and would have had such intense coastal flooding and inland flooding effects were it not for the added impact of human-caused climate change. So unfortunately, the North Carolina coast is getting hammered now by a very powerful storm, and we expect the impacts to continue along the coast at least for the next 24 hours and inland for the next 3 to 5 days, as Florence is expected to transform into a very heavy rainfall event. I just want to add that Florence is going to remain along the coast probably at least for the next day before moving inland. So we're going to see some very serious storm and storm surge and coastal flooding related impacts as this storm lingers before it moves inland. Thank you for joining me, and I'll be chatting with you soon.